Hey there, everybody. I have a question for you today. Do you believe in love? Well, the reason why I ask is because today we're interviewing Evan Marc Katz, and I'm so excited to have him here today because he wrote a book on believe in love, and he's going to tell us why you should believe in love. But before we jump into the interview, I would love to tell you about Evan Marc Katz because he's such an amazing person. He's billed as a personal trainer for smart, strong, successful women. Dating coach Evan Marc Katz has been helping singles find love since 2003. He's the author of 4 relationship books, most recently Believe in Love, and his blog reached 5 million people last year. Evan has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Glamour, and has appeared on CNN Today, The Early Show, The Tyra Banks Show, and The Rachel Ray Show. Most importantly, thousands of Evan's clients have fallen in love, gotten married, and started families thanks to his materials. Whether you're online dating, or embarking on a new relationship, once you learn to understand men from a man's point of view, you're going to be a very powerful woman. And I completely agree because that's exactly why I'm doing this video series and interviewing all male dating experts. So welcome, Evan.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your patience this morning.
Oh, you know, with technology, everything happens. You got to just go with the flow. So let's just jump into this interview because I'm so excited about this Believe in Love. And first I want to ask you, what actually motivated you to write this book, Believe in Love?
I did a survey of my mailing list a few years back. And when you do those kind of things, you don't know what you're going to get in return. What I discovered was that 20% of my clients were in relationships, my readers. 40% were dating, and 40% were doing nothing. They were just on a semi-permanent dating hiatus, licking their wounds, just reading material, but not in the pursuit of love. And even among the 40% that I worked with, the people that I coached, you'd find people who would invest 6 weeks in a guy, it wouldn't pan out, they'd get devastated and take the next 6 months off. One bad date could send someone running for the hills to quit Match.com. So I just saw this really unfortunate short-term thinking around dating and relationships where sort of objectively it's hard to find love if you're not out there pursuing love. If you're not going on dates, it's hard to find love. And so I found myself giving pep talks, just regular, like trying to get people back on the horse through the course of I have a 12-week coaching program, and through the course of coaching, I just found that a couple times every 3 months I'd have to, kind of redirect my clients and get them feeling better about this process and the realistic end goal of the process. Finding love is not something that is rare or exclusive. I mean, we've got 100 million married people in this country, right? That's a lot of people who are finding it. So it can't be that impossible. And I just wanted to remind people the necessity of the belief in love, because without that belief, there is no love. You wouldn't go on a diet if you didn't think it had the possibility of working.
Right. And I think you bring up a really great point, and I think there's an important point to bring up here is that finding love isn't impossible, but it's also not just going to happen on its own. You really do have to get out there, right? So how can you talk about a woman really needs to make time for finding love. So can you elaborate more on that?
Well, I mean, there's a dichotomy in which my clients are smart, strong, successful women, right? I deal with the best of the best of the best, the lawyers and the doctors and the CEOs, and they have everything but the guy. And they've built up this rich, full, independent, single life out of necessity. Right? They can't count on a man to support them, and so they do their own thing, and they travel, and they own their own place, and they do home renovations, and they have hobbies and lifelong friends, and no one's suggesting that there's anything wrong with it. But if all of your waking hours are already accounted for, if you're working 50 hours a week and you've got your 4 times a week yoga practice and you try to hang out with your married friends and their kids and see your family on the weekends and run errands, and where's the dating? So that the single men are not built into that life. And so that's where this, the rich, full single life sort of flips over and turns into a liability, right? It's not bad. No one's asking you to give up your life entirely and do nothing but go out with guys 6 days a week. But we need to build men and dating into your life. The same way, again, I always go back to the gym. I joke about being a personal trainer. You don't lose weight by thinking about the gym. You don't lose weight by signing up at the gym, right? You actually have to put it on your calendar. I'm going to get to the gym from 7:30 to 8 in the morning. If that's all you have to do, it's something. And we need to consciously build dating/online dating into our lives if we're going to have an opportunity to go out with one new guy a week. There's some modest expectation. Right? So this isn't like dating like you're desperate and mad and I need to find a man now. It's if I'm in communication with a bunch of guys, I recommend online dating. If I'm in communication with a bunch of guys and I screen and filter them and go out with one new guy a week, doesn't it stand to reason you go out with one new guy a week for 30 weeks, you're going to find a guy you like? Logically, it does. But if you get so dispirited that it might take you 30 guys to find them, well, now we've discovered the source of our problem. And that's, very, very low tolerance for failure, when failure is the default setting in relationships. Most relationships fail, right? Otherwise, everybody would be married to their high school boyfriend.
Well, that's true, and that's kind of scary. That's a scary thought, to be married to your high school boyfriend. But
exactly.
I mean, you talk about doing online dating, which I agree. I think it's a great way for women to meet men. But are there any other suggestions you have on what women should do to meet the right man?
I think all the other suggestions are highly overrated. I don't understand dating coaches who don't incorporate successful online dating into their business models. Because as we said, I'm working with smart, strong, successful women. They don't meet men. If they met men, they wouldn't be on the phone with me. So there's no one place where all the cute, successful, relationship-oriented men are hanging out that you haven't been told about. So the where question, where are they, is always the wrong question. It's not where are they. They're everywhere. Right? And if we flip it around, where are all the smart, strong, successful women? I'm a guy. How do I meet those women? Do you have an answer to that? Do I hang out at the bar association? I mean, what's the answer to that?
Well, that is true. I mean, you could hang out at all these different corporate offices.
But it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous question. And you don't hear men asking that question. Right?
So let's talk about, because I want you touched upon how you work with a lot of strong, independent, successful women, which there's a ton of them here in New York, and I get this question all the time from strong, independent, successful women, are men intimidated by strong, independent, successful women?
Not the right ones. I mean, that's the very thumbnail answer. Just if a guy's intimidated by you, then he's not your guy. But there's plenty of men who aren't intimidated by you. And this is the entire premise of my book, Why He Disappeared. And we're talking about Believe in Love primarily today, but the whole premise of Why He Disappeared is that why he disappeared isn't what you think. He didn't disappear because you're too smart. He didn't disappear because you're too successful and intimidating. He disappeared because he doesn't feel good around you. And that's a real challenging concept. And I go into it at length in Why He Disappeared. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. He's just the wrong guy. There's nothing to learn from I dated a jerk. He's narcissistic. He's selfish. He's commitment phobic. There's nothing to learn from that. It's just the wrong guy. But that trope that, oh, men are intimidated by me, does not serve women well at all. It is the equivalent of the nice guy saying, women don't want nice guys. They want jerks. All right? That's a misdiagnosis. Women do want nice guys. They just want nice guys with balls.
That's true. That is very true.
Right, but nice guys think, oh, they don't want nice guys. No, they want nice guys with a little something extra, and men do love intelligence, right? We love the fact that you've got that rich, full, single life. But sometimes, because of that rich, full, single life, you make him feel like he's number 6 on your priority list. Right? And no guy wants to be number 6.
Right. That is very true. So you're actually touching upon my next question, which is talking about limiting beliefs. And I want to throw some things out there because I hear a couple of limiting beliefs all the time, and it drives me crazy. And living in New York City is prevalent for there being more single women here than there are single men. And so a lot of women will say to me, well, I can't meet the right guy because there's more single women here than are single men. And I just think that's ridiculous. But I'll tell you the second one I hear a lot is a lot of women will say, well, men aren't serious about finding a relationship. They're just interested in sex. So can you tell us how these limiting beliefs, and these aren't the only two I hear, but I want women to hear how these limiting beliefs can actually hurt a woman's chances of finding love?
Sure. Let's get into that for a second, because the things you're talking about, interestingly enough, are well, the one about there being more women than men is probably factually true. It's just not the whole story. And men is one of my things. Men look for sex and find love. That's also factually true, but it's not the whole story. And that's really what we're talking about. So in a city of 10 million people, if 5.5 million are women and 4.5 million are men, does that make a difference when you meet a guy through a friend at a party? Does that make a difference when you're dating online? No, it doesn't make a difference. It's about you, it's about him. It's not about the rest of the world and the competition being so fierce. And the men looking for sex, well, yes, men are going, like when someone comes up to you at a party, it's not because he thinks you look like a great wife, right? That would be ridiculous to consider the idea that he's approaching you for that reason. Now, that might be in the back of his mind. Eventually, he wants to get married. But first, he's approaching you because he desires you. And he's going to pursue that desire and figure out over the course of 6 weeks if he wants to be your boyfriend and 2 years if he wants to be your husband. But all he knows right now is, I'm attracted to you. So instead of getting angry or surprised or blaming them for that, say, okay, that's the way it is. And if I know what I want, I'm going to be able to weed out the losers and the liars and the players. I'm not going to sleep with a guy just because he's cute and he's there and I'm needy. I'm going to have my boundaries, and I'm going to make him court me and take me out instead of just responding to texts at 1 in the morning to come over. And sure enough, people in New York City get married. So that's the point about the limiting beliefs is I understand your point about there being more women and guys that being interested in sex, and it doesn't change the fact that someone manages to get married in New York City.
That is true. That is very true. And I always say to women when they say that there's more single women here than there are single men. First of all, there's, I think, 7 or 8 million people here in New York City. Well, you only need one. Okay, you don't need 100, you only need one. But it requires, like Evan said, is for you to get out there and make time and date, because until you get out there and date, you're not going to meet the right one.
Yeah, in Believe in Love, the last page of the workbook, I have a 30-date challenge, right? And I encourage women to go on 30 dates, not in any X period of time, right? But I firmly predict if you go on 30 dates, you're going to find someone that you like. And if you don't, and if you find him on date 3, congratulations, you win. It doesn't have to be 30 dates, right? It's just going through that process. It's like if you have 30 job interviews, you're probably going to land one. If you have no job interviews or you get one and it's your dream job and it doesn't pan out, you say, I'm just not going to look for any more jobs.
I think that's really funny that you bring that up because I use that analogy a lot because when I'm actually originally from California. I grew up in California, but I moved to New York 17
I'm
years ago.
I'm a New Yorker who moved to California, so I get it.
We switch coasts, so you get the differences between the coasts. And when I moved to New York, what I noticed is women here are such go-getters in their careers. They'll do anything they can to advance in their careers. But when I became a matchmaker, because I didn't do this all my life when I lived here, is I actually used to work in advertising and marketing, and so I would watch these women do everything they could to advance their careers. And I always found it interesting when I became a matchmaker is that I would interview these women to see if they were good matches for my male clients, and I found it so interesting that they were doing all these things for their career, but they weren't doing all these things like you talk about and trying to find love, and then they would just come see me. And I always tell this to women, matchmaking is a much longer process than online dating. I'm not going to set you up on 100 dates, so you need to do other things than just coming to see me. And it's interesting because even when I spell it out for these women, they still don't take those extra steps that Evan's talking about and getting out there and doing online dating. Because I think you should do both. I think you should go see a matchmaker and do online dating.
Well, this is also why I'm not a matchmaker, right? I mean, candidly, when someone pays you X $1,000, they're not doing it for them to do more work. Find me my husband, Suzanne. Find him for me. Just where is he? Just give him to me. Online dating takes effort. There's no two ways around it. And people are paying for the privilege of not taking any effort. That's the truth of it. And I frankly don't want those clients. I want people who are willing to put in that time because I believe that gives you the greatest opportunity. So I don't object to anybody who uses a matchmaker. I think it's a wonderful supplement. But I think you're better off being in control of your own destiny, right, and taking responsibility. What can I do to make this happen instead of what can Suzanne do to make this happen?
Right, and you actually bring up a good point, but I want to clarify one thing is that I actually don't take on female clients. I only take on male clients, so women can join the service for free, but that's actually even worse for women, and I'll tell you why, is because I don't guarantee any dates. I have to first make sure you're a match for my male clients, so the process could be even longer than what Evan was just talking about. And it's very interesting because you brought up a really, really great point. It's very true about hiring a matchmaker because my male clients will come to me, they'll hire a matchmaker and they pay me these high fees. And you grew up on the East Coast, so you get this, the difference between California and New York. It's almost this weird thing of I make so much money, I want someone to do the work for me. And it's just like if you can afford it, they'll pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, another reason that I never went into that arena is that it's very, very hard to please people who think that they could throw money at the problem. They're paying to make problems go away. And usually the common denominator, the truth is, anybody who goes to a matchmaker should also have a dating coach because you can't like if he's, I mean, you watch Millionaire Matchmaker as an example. If he's just a shallow man-child, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. The shallow man-child is always going to find some reason to dissect women and move along. You can't make your clients into anybody that they're not. All you can do is make introductions, right? And I like working with people who at least take partial responsibility for where they are in their life. Without their buy-in, it's really hard to affect change, I find.
And you are absolutely right because I'll do a consultation with my male clients before I even take them on as a client, and I do an assessment as to whether or not they need a dating coach also. And I will tell you, I completely agree. Anyone that comes to a matchmaker actually needs both. They need a matchmaker and a dating coach because I tell this to everybody. No one is the perfect dater. Everybody has certain things that are going on. And like you talk about, which I want to get into next, is I actually go through people's past relationship history because I find that people repeat patterns. And until you realize what patterns you're repeating that could be bad, you can't break those patterns. And when you're in it, I find that people can't see it. I've uncovered so many different patterns for people once I start talking to them. But that's actually
exactly what's in the Believe in Love book, right? I mean, there's that whole section in the workbook where I ask you to evaluate your 3 most serious relationships and the common denominators between them. So a lot of people arrive at these same conclusions.
Yeah. So tell the audience how those past relationships can affect future relationships.
Well, because it creates a series of false beliefs, right? We're working on this very, very tiny palette, right? I dated Jim. Jim was an alcoholic. Men are alcoholics. It's like it becomes that linear. He was a cheater, so men are a cheater. He was a bad communicator, so men are bad communicators, and it's just not true. If anything, if we say, well, Jim was a bad communicator, Derek was a bad communicator, and Andre was a bad communicator, well, that just means you choose bad communicators because you're attracted to them. It doesn't mean that men are bad communicators. That's your choice. And it's hard for people to see outside of that. I did something on Facebook the other day. Do you think all men are cheaters? You might be surprised to find out otherwise. And I came with statistics that show that in a given year, 6% of men will cheat in their relationship. And over the course of a lifetime marriage, 25% of men will cheat, which is about 6% more than women. All right? Those are the numbers. And these women on my Facebook page wanted to refute those numbers because in their narrative, every man they've ever met was a cheater, even though the numbers belied their claim. So they've chosen low-character men and assumed that therefore men in general are low character. And that's the problem with bringing your past into the future relationships. Each new man is a completely different roll of the dice. What I say very simply, the next guy has nothing to do with the last guy. They haven't met, they're not friends, they're completely different guys. So how could you judge the new guy because of the old guy? And similarly, here's the easiest way to see it, Suzanne. If you were the woman who is being judged for his ex, how does that feel? My ex was a gold digger. Are you a gold digger? Right? That doesn't feel good. My ex was crazy. Are you crazy?
These are such great points. I love that you reverse it because women really need to see that if you put these blanket statements out there, they're just completely ridiculous. The problem is they have a basis in truth. It's just not the whole truth. So that's what Believe in Love is this very logical walk through the minefield of dating and relationships, shooting down all of these misconceptions that we have that are getting in the way of us dating and making real connections. And a big part of it is humans are flawed. Humans are irrational. I've got a library of books about how people think, and how we decide, predictably irrational, nudge, these Freakonomics tipping point types books that shine the light into our blind spots. And the fact is, most of us make our decisions very much based on emotion, and we need to bring some logic to the proceedings. Exactly. And I just want to touch on a point that you brought up is because I'll hear a lot of women say to me, they'll say, I keep attracting the wrong men. And like you had talked about, what I always say to them, well, what's the common denominator? The common denominator is actually you. It's not them, it's you. And that's why you have to, and I know how hard it is, but you need to start taking a look inward and finding out why you keep attracting the same type of men.
I even take issue with the word attracting. I think it's the wrong word. You're attracted to.
Right? Good point, good point.
Attracting makes it sound like you've got some magnet, like the bad man magnet inside you, and they just get sucked to you against your will. I can't help it. So here's a different way of looking at it. Most men are the wrong men. Most men are not your future husband. Go into a subway, throw a dart. What are the odds you hit your husband? So most men are the wrong men. So you're not attracting bad men. Most men aren't the right guy. So 90% of the guys who write to you online, you're going to dismiss out of hand, which is fine. Right? Most men aren't the right men. And it's not that you attract the wrong men because most men are the wrong men. You attract all sorts of men. You accept the wrong men. You put up with bad treatment. You put up with sleeping with him for 6 months without being his girlfriend. You put up with the occasional text as a means of communication. You put up with the fact that he's been with you for 5 years and he hasn't talked about marriage. Right? But you didn't attract him. You chose him and stuck with him, where other people would say after 3 weeks, this guy's not doing it for me. He's not being consistent. He's not being kind. I don't feel safe, heard, or understood. I'm out. So the only difference is not that you attract him, is that other women get rid of that guy faster, and you stay with him for long periods of time expecting him to change. And that's challenging. It puts the responsibility on you to cut him off, right? And why you stay, that's a completely different story. But let's just point out the idea that you don't attract the wrong men, you accept the wrong men.
That's a really good point. And I want to ask you a question about, before she cuts him loose, though, is it important for her to be strong enough to draw boundaries and not accept certain things that he's doing before she, like, kicks him to the curb?
Depends on what those things are. I mean, it's a good question, but it's a very broad blanket. Sometimes, have you read Lori Gottlieb's "Marry Him"?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I'll give you some examples though of whether or not she should draw boundaries, because I hear this a lot.
I just want to put this out there before you give me the specifics. In general, and again, I coach women. You could probably say the same thing about men. People choose the wrong boundaries, right? We compromise on things that we shouldn't compromise on. Kindness, consistency, communication, commitment. We compromise on those things, but we won't compromise on him being 5'10".
I'm laughing because how many times have I heard that as a matchmaker where a woman will come to me and he has to be 6 feet and above, and I'm like, and you're 5'1". Why does he have to be 6 feet?
Not even that. Just point out that only 15% of men are over 6 feet tall, and they're cutting off 85% of the dating population. And it just might take you a little bit longer to find your 6 foot tall prince. It's not that he doesn't exist. It's not that you have no right to be attracted to him. It's just a smaller pool of men. And I suppose that in addition to being 6 feet tall, you'd like him to make X amount of money. Well, only 5% of people make that amount of money, right? And in addition to that, you'd like him to be funny. What percentage of? So pretty soon you find their dating pool shrink, all because of these arbitrary criteria that we say are deal breakers but aren't. What are deal breakers? Consistency, kindness, commitment, communication. So people compromise, and they say, I'm compromising, but they're compromising on the wrong thing. So
that's a great point.
That's my take on compromise. It's easy to compromise on, stupid things, but most people don't. People, it's the conundrum of my business, and it's unfortunately what keeps me in business. Right? It's more important that they find a guy who likes skiing than they find a guy who calls them every night.
I know. I differentiate it between what are your wants and what are your actual needs. And I think that's really important. So I want to throw out the one thing that, you can talk about how can a woman draw boundaries, okay? So you actually touched upon it, is she's dating a guy for 6 months and she's sleeping with him, but he won't make a commitment to her. Before she kicks him to the curb, how can she bring it up or draw a boundary with them, or is it too late?
That's actually perfect. I'm really glad you said that. So two things that pop to mind. Number one, you can't undo the past, right? It's really, you could try to undo the past, you could try to reverse course, but it's not going to be very effective. You've been sleeping with him for 6 months, you can't be like, I changed my mind. I mean, like, you can, just it's not going to fly very well. Not going to be very effective in getting what you want. So the way to do it is to tie sex to commitment. I've had many conversations about this, written volumes on this. This is not to trap a man into a relationship. This is to assess whether he's worthy of being your boyfriend. So you date him for 4 to 6 weeks. He takes you out to dinner. He calls you. He follows up with you. You get to know him platonically. You fool around a little bit on his couch. Right? Over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, you both get to realize not just whether you're attracted, but whether you like the person enough to commit that time, not just based on chemistry, but based on his efforts. Right? So you make him feel sexual, attractive, blah, 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 but you hold something back for yourself. And if he wants to sleep with you, you say, you know what, Jeff, you're a great guy. I'm really attracted to you. I'd love to sleep with you right now. But I don't sleep with men who are looking at other women on Match.com. You can understand that, right? And he'll be like, yeah, I guess I understand. He might not like it, but he'll respect it. And if he runs for the hills, guess what? He didn't want you. He wanted to have sex with you. Right? And if he comes back for more, it means he's considering the role of boyfriend, and he's thinking about it. Right? And when you decide to be in an exclusive sexual relationship, he's in for the night of his life. Right? And now you don't have to have sex and worry the next day, is he going to call me? Is he going to call me? Is he going to call me? You never have to put yourself in that position by tying sex with a relationship. But again, it's not to extract a commitment. It's to buy yourself enough time to figure out if you want to be in a relationship. Because you'll learn a lot more in 5 weeks with a guy than you do after 2 dates and hopping into bed. It's easy to sleep with someone based on attraction. But what percentage of the time does that guy turn out to be a good guy? That's your responsibility for not saying no. Now, if you could have sex outside commitment and you don't care if he ever calls you again, God bless you. I don't judge you at all. Sleep with whoever you want. Just don't complain that these guys don't become your boyfriend and that you've been sleeping with him for 6 months. So I have no moral problem with sex whenever you want. My problem is when women come to me and complain he hasn't committed to me. And it's because you never demanded commitment, or it's now after the fact you're expecting. So it's not a negotiation after 6 months of sleeping with him. Hey, are you going to become my boyfriend or not? It's, you know what, John? It's been fun getting to know you. I'm not looking for a once-a-week hookup. I'm looking for a relationship that has the chance to last for a lifetime. It's pretty obvious after 6 months that it's not going to be you. Bye-bye, lose my number, take care, no hard feelings. That's how you handle that. It's not a negotiation. You're firing him. He's not getting the job done.
I love that you said that. And I think, as harsh as it sounds, I mean, a lot of women make that mistake. I can't tell you, I must get an email or two a week of women saying, well, I'm sleeping with him, but I just had this happen last week. A woman said she's sleeping with him, the sex is great, but he only stays for 30 minutes at a time. And I wrote her back and I said, if your girlfriend told you that she's dating a guy and he only comes over and he stays for 30 minutes at a time, he never takes her out on dates, what would that tell you? And
it tells us she's a worse negotiator than a prostitute. Prostitutes at least get paid for those 30 minutes. I mean,
right.
That's, I don't know what she's hoping to extract. Right? How can he fall in love with her if he doesn't spend any platonic time with her? What incentive does he have to take her out on a date when she doesn't seem to care whether he takes her out on a date? So,
exactly.
So again, I hear women complain, and I understand the complaint. He doesn't pay for me. He doesn't call me. He doesn't commit to me. Men, therefore, are bad, selfish, whatever. The truth is, it doesn't matter how bad or selfish or awful he is, even if you're 100% correct. He's an irredeemable human being. You can't be treated any way that you don't allow yourself to be treated. Right? If you say, enough, he's going to say, okay, bye. I'm going to go find someone else who will let me come over for a half hour. But you haven't lost anything. So you're complicit in how you're treated. You can never, you can blame men for treating you poorly, but you're the one who stays. So until you can extract yourself from the situation, and try not to have sex, because that's when you get emotionally bonded, right? It changes the equation, it changes the dynamic. The easiest thing to do is sit back and observe his behavior for a month before you decide if you want him as your boyfriend and before you decide if you want to have sex. And again, these are made up numbers. If he's like all boyfriend on you, following through every day, he could be your boyfriend in 2.5 weeks. I don't care, right? The whole point is it's based on his consistency in how he treats you, his excitement and enthusiasm towards you, rather than I'm going to sleep with him first and keep my fingers crossed afterwards that it all pans out. Because what percentage of time does it? There's going to be a lot of turnover and heartbreak. Now, everybody's had some relationship. I shouldn't say everybody, but most people have had the relationship where you hop into bed first and it does work out. But that's the exception. Most of the time, people end up getting hurt. So it's not that it can't happen that way. Everybody could tell some story of some hookup that led to love. It's just, if we're going to use the textbook says, don't sleep with a guy before you're in a relationship, especially if you can't handle it. And that's really the key. If you find that you're emotionally obliterated inside every time you have a sex with a guy who texts you once a week afterwards, stop doing it.
Exactly. I completely agree.
This is not Believe in Love, by the way. This isn't Why He Disappeared.
So ladies, you should actually get both his books. But okay, so let's.
I spent a lot of time on these subjects, as have you. So.
I know it's probably the number 2 question you get is why men disappear, right? Because I hear that all the time.
Where do I meet quality guys? And as I told you, there's no good answer to that question.
Right. So hopefully we haven't scared women in getting out there and dating. So what if, because I hear this a lot, and Evan, I'm sure you do too, is what if a woman hasn't dated in a long time and she's like, okay, well, I'm finally going to take the first step and I'm going to get out there, but she's really got this fear of rejection. How can a woman deal with that? And I think that's normal. I think everybody deals with the fear of rejection in all parts of their lives.
I think it's sort of a muscle that you build up. It has to come from a reservoir of genuine self-esteem. I see a lot of people who have great self-esteem in that they're very accomplished, but they have very low self-esteem in the area of men. I'm good at everything else, but I'm bad at men. And so I think that rejection becomes a lot less personal when you have a reservoir of self-esteem, where you can tell yourself that it's his loss, right? And mean it. Not, oh my God, I screwed up. I let this good guy get away. Nobody wants me. Like that, the inner voice in your head is really, really dangerous. So for whatever reason, societally, men are more accustomed to rejection. We're the ones who have to come up to you in 4th grade and pull your hair and be like, hey, do you like me? I mean, you know, we're the ones who have to put ourselves out. We make the approach. We ask you out. We pay. We plan the date. We make the first move. Right? You don't see the woman getting on her knee and getting rejected. So men say, okay, that's, you know, it hurts, but how else am I going to meet a woman? I can't just stand in the corner and hope she approaches me. So men get used to this. Women don't, right? But we're no different as people. We're human beings. Rejection can sting. The question is, what are you going to make it mean, right? Are you not lovable because one guy, you know, isn't attracted to you? No, just someone else will be attracted to you. You've had men attracted to you your whole life. You're going to give one guy control over your self-esteem, right? And that's the very logical component of it, as opposed to the emotional one, right? I dated online for 10 years. I went out with 300 people, right? Majority of them liked me, but there's probably 50 who didn't out of the 300. That's a lot of rejection. Have you been rejected by 50 guys, Suzanne? Probably not.
No, right? I've been rejected, and it hurts. I mean, there's no way around it. It definitely hurts. But this is what I will say: is the more you date, and I think you'll agree with me, Evan, is the more you date, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So when that one guy rejects you, you just keep going. Because if you only date one guy, like you were talking about earlier, if you go on one date every 3 to 4 months, of course it's going to hurt if he rejects you. Yes, but if you keep going on several dates.
This is the guy who's going to save me from a life of loneliness. This one guy. I haven't met anybody I liked for so long, so you cling to him as if he's a life raft in the ocean, instead of like, I could get online and have 100 guys write to me tomorrow. Now I'm in business. It's really that. It's how do I create this sense of abundance instead of scarcity, so that if I have 10 job offers on the table and one doesn't pan out, it's no big deal. I just look at another job offer, right? And so I think we have to remove the personal part of it. When you reject a guy, you went out with him, he was cute but not that cute, and he was smart but not that smart, and he was perfectly nice but not that compelling. You choose not to see him again. Should he go home and cry and give up on women? No, it's just, he's not for you. Someone will take him, just not you. So what reaction would you want someone to have to you rejecting him? Well, it's the same way. What we're really talking about, and this is a metaphor that's in Believe in Love, it's the Cinderella slipper, right? If you put on the slipper, right, and it doesn't fit, you don't get angry at your foot. You don't yell at the shoe or refuse to wear shoes ever again. You just try on a different slipper. That's dating. So it might be, trying on 30 pairs of shoes until you find one that fits, but there doesn't have to be the emotion or the anger in the process. Okay, it's another guy. It's another date that didn't work out. Next. It's a much healthier way to approach it. Okay, it's another slipper that didn't fit, instead of men suck or I suck. Neither of which is true.
I love that you use the shoe shopping thing, because now I think every woman's going, yeah, I wouldn't give up on shoe shopping just because a shoe didn't fit. I'd go find another pair. And it's true. So my last question I want to ask you is, why is it important for women to really step outside their comfort zone? And I see this happen a lot, is it's so uncomfortable. No matter how strong and successful a woman is in her career, it's really hard for her to step outside and do things that she wouldn't do when it comes to dating. So why is it important?
It also depends on what you're talking about when you talk about stepping outside your comfort zone. Some people have dug a groove into the ground That's their comfort zone. And it's really hard for a man to meet you in that groove. The aforementioned woman who works 60 hours a week and travels 20 weeks a year. And, well, if that's how you're comfortable, that's fine. But most men are not going to have an opportunity to meet you. And most men are not going to get much out of a girlfriend who's never around. Right? So when I hear the word step outside my comfort zone, I'm actually thinking of making different choices in men. Because I'm of the belief, as a dating coach, people come to me, well, when you're done working with me, you know who's going to be the same? Men. Men are going to be the same after 12 weeks of working with me. You know who's going to be the same? New York City is going to be the same after we're done here. So literally the only thing that can shift is you. And we don't, you know, you're an adult. I don't need to give you a personality-ectomy to change who you are. You are who you are. That's not going to change. Right? So short of changing New York City or men or your personality, what's the thing you can change? Your choice of men. That's it. That's the big one. So when I talk about getting outside your comfort zone, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. If you've always targeted, right, hypothetically, you know, your Wall Street investment banker guy, right, who works long hours, parties hard, drinks a lot, charismatic, money to burn, texting 10 women at once, no desire for commitment because he could always cycle through things he can do better, right? And that's your avatar of what you want in a guy. And yet that guy has never actually panned out and hasn't proven to be a good long-term relationship partner. You could say that, well, I will not settle. Well, what do you're currently settling on a dream that doesn't make you happy, right? Instead of saying, you know what, there's lots of guys in the universe who are great guys who are going to treat me well, who are attractive, who are smart, who are successful, but we're not dating our type anymore. And this is in Why He Disappeared. Andrea Sirtash has a book called He's Just Not That Your Type, something like that. And so I think we need to sort of get out of that comfort zone. Instead of trying to be, I can't think of any other word, but narcissists, trying to date the opposite sex version of ourselves. It's like you date yourself, but better without your flaws. That's what most people are looking for. And I don't say this from some sort of pedestal. I spent my whole life chasing East Coast intellectual liberal Jewish girls. Right? I wanted to date me. It didn't work. It took me 10 years to figure out, maybe I need to try something different.
So let me ask you a question. So your wife is totally not like that?
Totally not like that. When I talked about compromise, I compromised on all of those things. But I got the best person in the world. The kindest, warmest, most accepting, patient, greatest wife, greatest mom. I got all that just by giving up that she had to be Jewish and I had to be Jewish. And giving up, she's older than I am. And it didn't fit the picture. We were on Match.com. We weren't looking at each other. That's the point. It's not that Match.com was broken. We were both there. It has good people on there. It's that she wasn't looking for a Jewish guy. I wasn't looking for a woman 3 years older. Right? So this is what I mean by getting outside your comfort zone. That thing that you think you want is boxing you in. And if you date a guy an inch shorter, 2 years older, might make less money than you, but you make $95,000, he makes $75,000, suddenly you make $160,000 together. There's ways of doing this that you can have a lovely life that you didn't count on. And once we open up to dating on those margins, right, dating outside our comfort zone, great things can happen because your dating pool grows immensely instead of trying to thread that needle of your ideal man.
Exactly. And I love that you used your own personal example because I think that was really important for women to hear. But also, I'm going to say, from a matchmaker standpoint, because I see this all too often, is both men and women actually do this, is they'll come to me and they have, like you say, all these certain parameters that they want met. And it's first of all, I think it's completely ridiculous because what you're really looking for is the connection, common values, common interests, how he treats you, how she treats you, whatever it is. But what I realize is that you can set up somebody with all the parameters that they're looking for. The person can meet every checklist. But how many times, ladies, have you met someone that had everything on your checklist and you couldn't wait to meet them and you thought, oh my God, this is going to be the perfect guy for me. And then you met him and you absolutely had no chemistry, no connection whatsoever, and you didn't want to go out on a second date. And I think that's important. What Evan brings up is once you open up your parameters, you might meet the right guy.
Yeah, and I think we need to judge people. This isn't believe in love. How do you feel around him? Right? It's a feeling. What determines whether you go on a second date? Did I have fun? Was I attracted to him? Did I feel comfortable? Could I be myself around him? If you got those three things, you go out with him. And that is not always going to be the checklist guy. Right? It might sneak up on you because the attraction doesn't have to be a 10 off the charts. Right? You have to be attracted enough that if he went to kiss you at the end of the night, you'd be willing to kiss him back, but you don't have to want to jump his bones. So if you have a compatibility that's a 10 and an attraction that's in a 7, you've got a nice life. And most people chase the 10 attraction and put up with a 4 relationship.
That is so true. I love that you just said that. That is very true. And I think that's why maybe a lot of people haven't found love, but they need to believe in love. So we're going to end this video because I always tell my audience this, is you can watch all these videos, but if you don't do anything to change, nothing's going to change in your dating life. So, Evan, give our audience a couple of action items that they need to do to help them believe in love and find love. Probably one is, I'm going to say, go get Evan's book, Believe in Love.
I'll make it even easier. Come to my website, evanmarckatz.com, www.evanmarckatz.com. On the homepage, there's a video talking about this very thing, right? How chemistry has led you into choosing the wrong men for your entire life and how you can turn that around. So watch this free video. If you like the free video, you'll be on my mailing list. You could buy Why He Disappeared. You could buy Believe in Love. You could just read for free forever. I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. Just get this information. If you found this a stimulating conversation, get on the mailing list, and I will give you free information until you drop. And that's really all I would ask. As far as tangible steps beyond, these products, date. Right? I mean, I have a program called Finding the One Online that shows you how to date online from beginning to end. But really, regardless of whether you buy an online dating program, put yourself out there, right? Give time to this. If you work 45 hours a week, give 5 hours a week to looking for guys, right? Give it something, because if you don't give it anything, it's watering a garden. It just dies, right? And it's very, very hard to find love when you're just counting on meeting him in real life. And if you look back at your past year and you say, I only met one guy that I liked at all, and that only lasted for 3 dates, and I only went on 2 dates total. Well, so you're giving yourself one chance a year, right? Look at yourself in 10 years. Is this what you want? One chance a year at finding love based on luck and happenstance. Luck and happenstance isn't a strategy. So I'm very much a believer that whatever you put energy and effort into, it'll pay you in return. Not necessarily immediately, but eventually. And those who persevere don't take rejection personally, right? Open up to the process of dating and the turnover. Don't get angry at their foot when the slipper doesn't fit, right? And believe the best in men, because someone is getting happily married out there. There's no reason it shouldn't be you.
Exactly. I love that. So, ladies, you need to get out there and date. And I want you to believe in love, because love can really happen, and you have to go out there with a positive attitude.